Alright, what's up guys? Welcome to another episode on the SC300. So, if you didn't watch last video, I'll put the link right here. I unveiled that I picked up an SC300 as my next drift car. Since that I got rid of the Impreza, it was time for me to get a new drift car, and I picked up that SC. So, last video, I just did a little, kind of like a little walk around of the car, but we also dropped out the rear diff and also the rear subframe, which the rear subframe you didn't see because the camera and mic was not working that day. But since then, I saved basically the filming time of cutting out all those control arms, prepping the subframe and painting it. So I just did that the other day, actually 2 days ago now. I didn't bother filming it because all of it was kind of just, it was annoying, basically just having to cut everything out. So let me just show you right now what the subframe looks like after it's all been painted. So this is it now. Everything, I degreased the entire subframe. I wire wheeled a couple areas of it that were kind of like some of these like welding seams and stuff that were kind of like the paint chipped off and got a little bit corroded on it. I just wire wheeled that a little bit and just power washed it afterwards after I degreased the whole thing. And then I just painted it black the other day just to kind of just seal everything in and kind of just to make it all one color, nice and clean. These look brand new, but these are actually the original control arms that were in it. I think he said that he replaced these at one point. There was a little bit of a corrosion on the aluminum, so I just wire wheeled those at the same time. So both of them are wire wheeled. I degreased them, power washed them. I taped them off when I was painting everything. And the other day when I was here, I installed the rear subframe urethane bushings. So these are made by Super Pro. So I picked these up. Basically what these do, these actually sandwich the original subframe bushing together. So it kind of like, I don't know, it's basically gets rid of the use of the rubber bushing on the inside, and it uses these urethane kind of sandwich plates, I guess I'll call, as like the bushing. So now this is like extremely rigid, shouldn't be going anywhere. I have the same thing for the front, but that has to wait until I go to put it in back into the car. And then I also picked up the Sicky solid diff bushings. So these obviously get pressed into the subframe when I still have the other ones in the box to go into the diff that's over there still. But basically I'm at the point where all of the control arms are cut out. I have new hardware for almost all of it. I have to kind of dig around to see if I still have some of the other stuff that we took out. But after cutting everything out, I was able to save a lot of like the eccentric areas, so they should still be fine. Not that I'm going to use the eccentric anyway, because I'm going to show you the control arms and stuff that I have. They're all adjustable themselves, so I'm not going to need to use the eccentric spots. So let me go open up all those boxes, take the suspension out, and I'll show you. Alright, so I basically every single like control arm besides those aluminum upper ones I bought, because the tow rods and the lower control arm, I had to cut the bolts out, which then obviously the bolts got stuck in the bushings, and instead of just buying new bushings, I just went ahead and bought everything all adjustable anyway, because I was eventually going to upgrade to this stuff anyway. So I actually, when I first bought the car, when I looked at the suspension, like right when I got it, I actually found on eBay some dude over in Japan selling all the suspension arms for the left rear, which is obviously right here, and that's exactly what I needed. And I got them for like 50 bucks or something like that, like something really cheap. So easiest route, I could have just replaced that. But knowing that I wanted to eventually replace it with all this stuff anyway, and I wanted to do all the bushings and make it all real nice, basically like restore it, I figured this was the best time to do it anyway. So I went ahead, spent the extra money, and just got all these control arms. So now these silver ones right here are just eBay specials, but these are actually like name brand. I forget what the company's called. Let me go find out. I think I have the box over here still. Oh, phase 2. Yeah, so these were cheaper than the Megan Racing control arms. These are actually quite a bit cheaper than the Megan Racing ones, and I've run Megan Racing stuff in the past and I've never had luck with them. So these being cheaper and these actually being a better brand, I actually have the phase 2 tow rods on my BRZ, and those have been perfectly fine. So I went ahead, just got theirs. I like this blue powder coat, and it has this like kind of like ball joint replacement piece that goes into the knuckle. It's not gonna focus on it, but it has that instead of like a regular ball joint because it's got a Heims joint right in there. So that's kind of cool. And then obviously it has the spot for the coilover and the sway bar end link, which I actually still need to order end links and actually still get coilovers. But so what we're gonna do today is that we're gonna basically put this whole subframe back together and get the knuckles on there, and then actually hook up the bolt on the hydro dual caliper bracket and test fit the Brembo calipers that I kind of not really modified to fit, but they're for a Subaru, but I got them to fit on the dual caliper bracket. I'll show you guys in a second, but for right now let me go grab those knuckles and we can start throwing all these pieces on. So with these knuckles, what I'll show you better when I'm ready to put the dual caliper bracket on, but with these knuckles we had to modify the knuckle just a little bit to fit the bracket. So like this area right here, you can't really tell because now everything's black, but this kind of went across to this, like the casting, and you have to open this up. So I just used my cutoff wheel, cut it off on either side, and I used a file just to file it down a little bit more. So that's got to get chopped right there because the bracket kind of like sandwiches this, comes over to the opposite side. And in order to run it, you got to chop it right here. So while I had this thing out, I wire wheeled the whole thing. I painted it black, cleaned up the face of the hub. If I was smart, I would have replaced the wheel bearings, but I'm kind of on a budget. But these wheel bearings are fine, but just as basically my mentality of if it's out, might as well replace it. But it's good for now. They're not too hard, like the knuckle isn't too hard to get out. But then these lower bushings for the traction rod, I had to cut both of them out. So the bushings were no good. So I pressed the bushings out and I put these Super Pro urethane bushings at the bottom of them. So now those have new bushings as well. And basically let's just, I gotta find the bolts for the control arms and stuff, and we can start throwing this stuff together. And so of course for today I don't have the lower control arm bolts that go into the subframe part. I have everything that I need to put them into the knuckle, just not the subframe. Those are actually in my ISF, and today of course I took my Tundra over to the shop today, so I don't have those parts. But for now I'll just like stick a screwdriver or something in there just to hold it in place so I can still just assemble everything else. So I just got all the hardware out. The knuckles are ready to go on, so let's just time lapse the knuckles and basically all the suspension going in. Alright, so I just ran into the first little small problem. Not a huge problem. I could fix it. But these 19mm bolts I just have laying around, they're just ones that I grabbed from work. They go into the knuckle perfectly fine, but they don't go into the traction rod. So I need to drill these holes out just a little bit. Looks like literally just like one more size bigger, and then it'll be fine. So I'm just gonna take this back off, drill those holes out, and then we'll get right back into it. control arms on, I got the knuckles on. If you saw me banging in these areas, basically everything was so tight, and the new spacers for these like Heim's joint areas were a little bit wider, so I just had to bend them out of the way a little bit. But once I tighten everything down, it'll go back to how it's supposed to be. So right now, I left the eccentric bolts, like the eccentrics like these. I left the ones for these in the ISF, like I said. So I just have 2 bolts that are just random ones just to hold them in for now. But for the most part, this is how it's going to be. I can tell the knuckles, this one especially, is totally out of alignment, but obviously none of these are adjusted. All of these are basically adjusted as far in as possible. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip it upside, well, right now it's upside down. I'm going to flip it right side up, and we can start screwing around with the brakes. Alright, and now for the dual rear caliper bracket setup. Here, I'm just going to sit down. Unfortunately, I can't completely install everything, not today, because the stock calipers, which I'm going to reuse, well, I'm going to use stock ones for the actual like brakes. This one's off the passenger side. The driver's side one, this bracket actually got bent in that accident that the dude got in. So instead of just ordering 1 caliper, I'm going to order 2. I'm going to order 2 like reman ones. At work, I resurfaced the rotors, and I just painted the top hats black again. And then same with the stuff over here. This caliper over here is actually a Brembo caliper, even though it says Greddy on it. I don't know the history behind these calipers that I got. I got these off eBay, and I actually technically got these ones for free because I ordered a set. Well, I bought a set of 4 calipers off eBay. Apparently STI calipers, back when I was doing the Brembo conversion on the BRZ, which if you haven't seen that video, I'll put it up in the corner right there. But I ended up getting these and then a set of smaller 2-piston calipers for, I forget how much, I think maybe like $400 for a set of 4. It was like a bid, and I won the bid. And I wasn't sure what these came off of. So I've never seen any type of caliper like this before, and I wasn't really sure, with it saying Greddy. But I ended up getting these calipers, and the rear calipers ended up not even working. Like the ear configuration was totally different from like a US spec Brembos. So I emailed the dude who I bought the stuff from, and I said, hey, look, like this stuff doesn't work. Like, do you want it back? And like either just give me a refund, or can we work out like some type of deal, because I can't use them. So he ended up just I bought them, I think, for maybe like $350, I think it was. He refunded me like $250. So I got basically a set of 4 random Brembo calipers for $100, which I looked up the actual part number that's on the back. See, and it's even stamped Brembo. But I looked up the part number, wherever it is. It's over here somewhere. That part number in there, I matched it with the brand new BRZ/86 rear Brembo calipers. So these calipers come on the rear of the Brembo package BRZ in the 86. I'm not saying these ones came off of them, because someone would have had to re-powder coat them and powder coat Greddy into it. This isn't even a sticker. This is actually powder coated in there saying Greddy. So they've been sitting around, and instead of, basically this dual caliper bracket is meant for another set of stock SC300, SC400 calipers, but I have 2 sets of 2-piston Brembo calipers sitting around, so I was actually able to make these actually fit by just drilling one hole a little bit longer than the other. Like these stock ones, like, is actually super close to actually fitting. I thought I was actually going to be able to bolt it on without having to modify it, but I've had to drill another hole. This is actually the hole that I had to set up the drill press with. With that hole there, now I can just put this on, so it'll basically go, oh sorry, no, it goes on the other side. Basically goes in just like this. So that's where, on this part of the knuckle, where you had to trim down, because this slides right in that spot. And then then it basically uses the stock caliper bracket to sandwich all of this together. So then you get another spot on this side. So I'll just mock this side up just so you guys can see it, and basically just so I can see it all together. And I'll show you guys what it looks like once I get everything together. Alright, so this is the thing that I kind of designed. So the dual caliper bracket comes up and around, which I apologize I can't really see because everything's dark and everything I painted black. The dual caliper bracket comes down and around, comes over to this side, just like this. Again, I'm sorry you can't see it, just believe me, it comes down to this bolt right here. So then I had to drill an additional hole just to get this thing, the bolt pattern basically, to line up. But then my only concern is that me doing that, it kind of pushes the caliper up a little bit. Like you can see it from right here, kind of pushes the top up a little bit, but the pad contacts pretty decently. It contacts most of it. So I'm kind of curious of just running that and just seeing how it goes, and if it doesn't really work that well, then maybe I'll just get another set of those. But I think it should work fine. And again, the pad kind of overhangs the top a little bit, like top of the rotor, because the pad surface is a lot, bigger than what the rotor surface is. But it's only going to be used for handbrake, so as long as it just locks the obviously if it locks the rear wheels, then it does its job. So like I said, I have these just sitting around, so I might as well try and use them. My next concern, which I don't think should be a problem, is if that area up here is going to clear a 17-inch wheel or not, which I'm pretty sure it will. Once this subframe goes into the car, I'll have a better idea to see if it works or not, but I think it should. And that's basically it. So the other side, basically I have to get another caliper so I could do this side as well, and that's literally all I'm waiting for before I could just put it all together. So I think tomorrow during work I'm going to order up a set of rear calipers, and then it'll basically be all set. At that point I just got to weld the diff, clean the diff up and probably paint it, put it back in. Same with the axles, and we can just throw the whole thing in just as one big assembly. So the funny thing about like that subframe and like all the new control arms and stuff, and like how I'm taking time like painting everything, and I bought all new hardware for all of like those control arms and stuff. A couple of my buddies are kind of like making fun of me for like basically restoring that whole rear subframe, and basically once I get to like the front suspension and obviously the engine and all that stuff, basically it's going to be like a full restoration on this car, except it's my drift car, which could possibly get smashed and totaled. But if I have it out, I might as well replace it, might as well refresh it. So like that, like who wouldn't want a subframe that looks like that? Why leave it rusty? Why leave it covered in grease when you can make it look like that, literally brand new? And just drop it, not drop it in, but put it in, and then obviously unfortunately it's underneath the car, so no one's ever going to see it, except you'll know it's there. So next episode, I think in the next couple of days I'll be back here, and I think we're going to tackle the diff. I have a welder here, so it should be able to weld it. So I think next episode we're going to take that diff apart, we're going to weld the diff, put it back together, maybe clean it. I might not paint it yet just because I need to bring it to work and try and press out these little rubber bushings that are in the front. So these right here, I have solid ones of these, which I've already started trying to get this one out, but it's being a little stubborn, so I need to bring it to work. I'm going to heat this area up and keep on going at it to see if it's going to make it any easier, which it should, but I don't have a torch here, so right now I'm stuck. So I'll probably open it up, weld it here, then bring it to work, get these out, get the new solid bushings in, and then we'll clean it up and paint it. Basically I got everything done that I wanted to. I got to mock up the dual caliper bracket, which it was kind of difficult to do with just like a knuckle on the bench over there. doing it on like the suspension, I don't want to say on the car because I was not on the car, doing it on the subframe with all the suspension pieces, I'm able to line everything up and get everything to basically how it's going to be when it's on the car, which was great. And that's basically where I just wanted to leave it today, since I didn't have 2 calipers to put on the back to actually finish it. But until next time, don't forget to give me a subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. See ya.